Welcome to the Diabetes Podcast, where real stories meet real science, helping you take charge, not just take medicine. Today, we're bringing you a powerhouse conversation that could change the way you approach blood sugar, fitness, and long-term health. Our guest is Philip Pape, host of the Wits and Weights podcast, coach, and engineer, who's built a coaching app that blends evidence, systems, and real-world coaching psychology to help you take action. We'll dive into the biggest blind spots in blood sugar management, how building muscle supercharges insulin sensitivity, and why walking plus lifting is a game-changing combo. We're going to talk about where beginners should start with lifting, what appropriate challenge actually feels like, and how to train safely with or without past injuries. We'll cover sleep, stress, CGMs, and why one big lever at a time beats all or nothing, as well as minimum, optimal, and bailout plans so you can keep winning even on chaotic days. If you've ever wondered how to use strength training to stabilize blood sugars or how to get started without being overwhelmed, this episode is for you. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, we are in for a real treat today. Today, we got the host of the Wits and Weights podcast, Philip Pape. Philip, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yay. Awesome. So, Philip, I'm really excited for so many things, but especially to talk about your new app that you have, because I found that searching through Instagram, and I know that you're beyond being a coach and a podcaster. You compiled all of the work that you've done and used your engineer background to help people with this app. So can you tell me what pushed you into the work and what your vision for this app is and how it can help people?
Yeah, like you said, I have a ton of content. We were joking before we record that even my podcast alone, it's like 3 episodes a week. And I love to do research and understand the evidence. And I hope we get into some of that today, because I appreciate you plugging my app right off the bat. I hope the listener knows there's a lot behind the science we could get into today.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, as a coach, I only have so much time, so much bandwidth. I'm also an engineer, like as a day job. So I'm an entrepreneur at the same time. And I can only handle like 5 to 10 full-time clients and maybe 100 people in a group, 100, 120 people in my group program before bandwidth is an issue. And I thought, how could I scale what a coach does? Well, 5 years ago, I would say it's very difficult. Today, because of AI, there's ways to do it where you could emulate not only the information and interpreting the data, like if you have a continuous glucose monitor, if you have a step count, or if you have a training program, what do you do with that data? Like, what's the next step? And what should I do today and tomorrow? But then also, what would a coach do? Well, a coach would answer off the wall random questions every day based on your latest struggles and frustrations. And before AI came around, it would be hard to come up with a solution, a technology-based solution. Now, there are a lot of coaches that I feel like probably don't like it. I've seen criticism, people saying like, oh, gross, I would never use AI in this space. Like, I've heard the criticisms like that. And all I say is, look, until you try something, right, don't judge it. And the way I came to this app is not like, hey, here's ChatGPT, just go, ask it questions. It's, here is the body of evidence. Here's 400 episodes of my podcast. Here's 80 guides that I've created for clients. Here's a method and a process and a system that simplifies all of that confusing information into, here's 5 things you do today, or here's 2 things you do today. And if you run into issues, chat with me and I'll have an immediate answer. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I like it. And I think probably, if I had to guess, the criticism is from people who don't really understand how you can feed the AI model. Like if you've built it correctly and you feed it with the material that is backed by science and robust, it's a pretty good model, and you're an engineer, a software engineer,
Yeah.
so I think that you can do this. It's
Which
awesome.
the irony of that, because I do talk about the engineering side, the irony is that the power of coaching and improvement and consistency, as we know, is more in the psychology, right? It's much more in the psychology than in the engineering the systems. But if you don't have the system to begin with, you're totally lost. Once you have a system and you have steps to follow, then the next roadblock people run into is, all right, I know what to do, I just can't do it. And then
Yeah.
that opens up a can of worms of where's the friction, where are the roadblocks, is there emotion and stress involved? And again, you're like, well, how does AI do this? It's not a human. Believe it or not, if you're at 3 a.m. struggling with something, going to the fridge for ice cream, and you're able to open my app and say, look, I'm struggling, I just went to the fridge for ice cream, you're going to get a pretty empathetic response that walks you through some thoughts on how to reflect on those emotions and maybe what some tools to put in place for next time. And that's really what a coach does. And that coach never sleeps. So
That's the key, finding the
yeah,
coach that is there when you really need them and never
I
sleep.
know.
I love that. Okay, so a lot of what I hear with people who have diabetes, pre-diabetes that I work with is, you know, I'm doing everything. I like they have this, they don't know what they don't know, and there's some blind spots. What have you noticed is kind of the, other than just saying the mindset piece, like what specifically do you notice is a big blind spot for people who are struggling more with their blood sugar? Not that it has to be specific like that, but I'll stop talking because it's already a long question.
No,
Huh?
there's several blind spots I can think of. One is super practical, and they're not resistance training. I mean, that just a lot of people are not consistently training correctly, and they're doing a lot of other things that they feel is training, like cardio or walking. Walking's great, by the way. We're going to talk about walking because that's a huge, amazing part of this conversation. But I think when we talk about glucose control and managing blood sugars and insulin sensitivity, oh my goodness, building muscle and strength is the biggest lever of all, in my opinion, other than not being sedentary. So that's the biggest blind spot. If somebody's like, no, no, I am lifting weights, I would say the other side of the equation is always restricting on the diet side, like chronic restriction, not enough protein, not enough calories, because that, as much as you're trying to do it to improve the situation by potentially losing weight, it's backfiring in terms of your metabolism, muscle loss, your stress, how you feel every day, how you perform, all of that. So those are the two big ones.
Here, here. I second that as well. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree because so many times people back off so much towards calorie restriction that they don't recognize the fact that they could be losing muscle mass in doing that. And I love that you said weight training because yes, we want people up. We want like start somewhere, and typically that's walking, but you got to put the muscle mass on, especially if you have been restrictive dieting, cutting out that protein. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. So if someone is like, I hear you, I should be weight training. What does that even look like? I'm intimidated by the gym. I don't know where to start. What would you recommend? Step one, step two?
Yeah, this is always a tough one because it does start where you're at, right? And
Mhm.
I know you've had some guests on the show recently talk about, hey, just get out and start walking. And that often is my first advice for someone who's super sedentary. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out a way to move your body against load, against
Yep.
resistance, because that's what's going to unlock the glut floor transporters, right? Those little doors that allow glucose to shuttle out of your blood into your muscles. That's what's going to make your muscles bigger, which then they store more of that glucose. So when we talk about blood sugar management, it's huge. For most people, that's going to be either starting with the basic movement patterns, body weight, or, if they have access to a gym and a good trainer, jumping right to that. I have no problem. There's a lot of advice. It's like, you don't have to go to a gym. You can start body weight, start bands. I agree. And at the same time, if you have access to a squat rack at home, or if you have access to a gym and a trainer, there's no reason not to just jump to like trying barbells or dumbbells or something like that. There's no reason not to, because you can titrate it to whatever your capability is. If you're 80 and you've had issues with, sarcopenia and osteopenia, you can still lift like a 2-pound dumbbell. You know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
always a place to start. So, that's what I would say. As far as the actual process, I mean, we can get into it, Amber. That's like a whole, where do you want to begin with all that?
I
Right?
know
Because
there's
that
so
can
many cans
take
of
up the whole
worms.
episode.
Which can do we want
Yeah.
to open, right?
I'm just trying to be
Um,
quiet over here because I've got like a bajillion questions about
why don't you go? Your turn, Richie.
Okay. So we talked, walking's great. That's that big 80%, the vast majority of just movement, can be, obtained through not a lot of, super high level cardio, but specifically as it relates to muscular development and, our population. I mean, we're in our population. We're on what I've heard described as the wrong side of 40. And things don't things don't progress as quickly as they did maybe in my 20s, where almost like it didn't matter what you did. If you did anything, you'd see some kind of positive results. What does dosing look like for an aging population? Is it just 3 sets of 12 with 120 seconds of rest in between, just the standard, or is there some considerations for tissue health and recovery and all that other kind of stuff? And I'm sorry, that was a lot of questions too.
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying like
Yeah,
there are fears
I
behind
do
this
that too.
related to lifting safely and also your physical capabilities, and potentially have like an injury history. You have sore knees, sore joints, right? All of that is kind of
Mm-hmm.
inherent in the question, let alone the fears of like getting bulky and like, is lifting weights even necessary and all of that. So when I say start where you're at the end of the day, we have to lift heavy enough and challenging enough to be more than what our body is capable of today, tomorrow. That's the basic principle of it. It's progressive overload. It's mechanical tension. What that looks like is, I mean, if you're completely sedentary right now and you start doing chair squats,
Mhm.
that could be challenging to you, where you do 5 of those and you're kind of wiped. Maybe you do it twice and then
Mm-hmm.
you take a day off and you do it again. But by day 3, now you need to go to a lower chair because it's not going to feel challenging, or you have to do more reps. And then
Right.
by day, 6 or 7, you're going to have to add some weight, like with a dumbbell for a goblet squat or even a barbell on your back, right? So to me, that's what it comes down to. Once you once you realize what that is for you, then it's a matter of progressing from there indefinitely. Rep ranges are only important to the extent of your goals. And what I mean by that is you can build muscle at a wide range of rep ranges according to the evidence, everything from, 3 reps to 30 reps. I mean, it's a huge rep range. All that matters is that you're getting within 2 to 4 reps shy of failure. Where failure
So
is, yeah, go ahead.
so for our again
Yeah.
new to this kind of stuff population, there's a very common no pain, no gain, which I don't think is accurate, but something along the lines of no challenge, no gain is probably closer to what we're actually talking about. Can you get a little bit into what they should be feeling, what that actually looks like, regardless of how many reps that is? Is there kind of some sensory feedback that would indicate I'm telling my body doesn't speak English, my body speaks stress, right? In response to stress, what's appropriate stress feel like? What is that for somebody that's new to this?
Yeah, I think one measure we could use is reps in reserve, right? That's one measure we can use. Although I'm going to simplify it after that just in a second. But reps in reserve are how many reps you have left in the tank, so to speak. So let's say you're going to pick up a dumbbell between 2 hands or a kettlebell, and you're going to do a full, deep squat. And if you can't do a deep squat yet, that's a different situation. We can ladder ourselves to there. You're going to full deep squat, and you're carrying 20 pounds, and you just start doing the reps. Well, if you feel challenged, but you feel like you have a few more in you, you probably have 3, 5, 6, 7 or more in you, especially if you're a beginner. If you could feel like it's getting hard, but you could do a few more, you probably have 2 or 3 left in you. If you get to the point where the next one feels like climbing a mountain, like a grind, now you're hitting that 8 or 9. And then, of course, if somebody paid you to do another rep and you couldn't, that's like absolute failure. I don't think most people have a problem with training too hard. Like, honestly, from what
Yeah.
I've seen, that's not the issue. It's training hard enough. Now, I said I'd simplify this for you. With most beginners I work with, whatever age, I like what's called sets across, where you just do a certain number of sets with the exact same number of reps. So like 3 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 10, because then on day 1, you just do them. Maybe you picked a heavy weight, maybe you picked a light weight, it doesn't matter. The next time you go in, which should be literally the next session because you're a beginner, you're going to add some weight. Well, when you keep doing that, eventually you're going to start feeling the heaviness of it and realize what that means to be
Mm.
close to failure. You know what I'm saying? And eventually you're going to
Yeah.
then have to learn, okay, I can only go up so much. And maybe at some point I actually can't do it and now I've really hit my limit.
So if I can read between the lines, don't try and establish, max threshold your first day. Day one's kind of just, it's more important that you actually do the thing. This is our baseline. And at the end of it, maybe an audit. Did that feel challenging? Could I go up? But that is that close to
Exactly. Like if I
Okay.
were to train someone remotely, or I have trainers work with me, they will have me report on the reps in reserve so that they can know how close I was. And that's the feedback process. You don't know from day one. The second thing though, that's interesting is what's called neuromuscular adaptation. So
Mhm.
I mentioned before, you can build muscle at any rep range. Well, you build strength at heavier loads, and strength is a function of how much force you can produce. And it's a function of both your muscle and your neuromuscular connection, right? So the term neuromuscular adaptation implies that the first 2-3 months of a beginner lifter's journey, they're basically making neural connections to use their muscles more effectively and to use more of their muscle fibers and the deeper muscle fibers as well. And you can only access those by telling your body, I need to lift a lot as a percentage of my capability, like 70, 80, 90%. So for those first 2 or 3 months, what's happening is you're getting stronger, but you may not be building muscle, and so that strength comes from the skill and the movement pattern being programmed into your brain and the use of that muscle. Then you hit a wall, physiologically, and your body's like, okay, now we got to crank up the size of those sarcomeres in your muscle tissue. And now you can look bigger too, in a good way.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that inability to just go to 100% without training, that's kind of like a safety mechanism built in by your body to prevent you from just tearing stuff all the time every time you tried to pick up a coffee pot at 100% or whatever that is.
Yeah, that's adaptation. So that we call it either the fitness curve or the stress adaptation recovery cycle, SAR, right? Where the training stress comes from what you do in the gym. Then you go to sleep and your body adapts and then you recover. Well, if your body hasn't adapted to deadlifting 225 pounds and you try to lift 225, you're either going to hurt yourself or it's just not going to move, right? Like for most people, they're just not going to move. Because as a side tangent, lifting weights is probably the safest activity on the planet when you compare to any other activity, right? Where like soccer and running are on the other end is the most dangerous. Yoga is somewhere in the middle, believe it or not. And then lifting is
I'm surprised,
the safest.
I think for my age group, it's actually basketball. From what I understand,
basketball's up there,
that quick turns and that
Yes.
jumping on hard surface,
Yes, all of that. So having said that, the adaptation is where the lifting heavy confuses people, because if you're again a 7-year-old who's never lifted before, you might deadlift an empty bar, 45 pounds, right? And that's heavy for you. But then as your body adapts, you can lift heavier and heavier and heavier. And then a year from now, you're deadlifting 225 and you look back and you're like, look at that weak person I was last year. But now I want to get to 275 because this is kind of easy for me. So
that's awesome. And then I want to add, in terms of the most dangerous, I think it's the weekend warrioring. I think that's probably
no
maybe not basketball
whatsoever.
as much as weekend
Okay,
warrior
so
basketball.
fair enough. Pickup basketball is way more dangerous than I play basketball every single day.
Depends on what list you look at. Like as far as actual consistent athletic pursuits, I think running and soccer, I think, are at the top. But for age ranges, you're right. It might be split up in other sports. Doesn't matter. I don't do those. I don't run.
I ran today.
But no offense against running. I'm just saying I don't run, so I have enough other things to deal with. I had shoulder surgery recently. It wasn't from lifting.
I heard your second one, right?
Yes, it was a revision repair.
Wow.
Yeah. But I have had 2 lifting sessions already since then.
Awesome.
Not with that arm though.
Oh, okay. I'm sure you'll get the green light soon.
Yeah. Takes time
to do that safely. Awesome. I'm still thinking about that person that is just not doing any lifting at all, going about their day, struggling to even walk. And of course, we want people to walk first. What words of encouragement, how can you assure them? I don't know if that's the right word, but like, it's almost like kicking the baby bird out of the nest, like the Nike slogan, just do it. Like, how can you motivate someone who has really never exercised formally in their entire life to lift. Like it seems like such a big gap, you know?
You know,
That's the piece that
if
I mean, I'm struggling here. So I wouldn't expect you to be like, I have the answer. I mean, just what do you think?
I mean, everybody's
What's your
motivated.
opinion?
Everybody's motivated by something different. I think
Hmm.
here's my big answer is it's about identity. So like
Yes.
when we
Whoa,
talk about
yes.
behavior
I love it.
change and
Hmm.
psychology, and it's not about habits. Habits are like those little automated things that you do. Like, okay, I put on my shoes when I get up in the morning, you know.
Hmm.
I make breakfast in the morning. The identity based shift is here's the person I want to be because of some deeply meaningful reason, which
Yeah.
then leads you to want to understand those reasons. And the reasons may be, okay, I understand the science of muscle, or I have relatives who've been in nursing homes and I saw them, you know, decline very quickly because of lack of movement and they were frail. Or I have, you know, family members who gained a lot of weight over the years and they were pre-diabetic and started walking less. They were never active, and then they died when they were 60 of a heart attack or whatever. You know, whatever it is. I hate to
Hmm.
paint these terrible sides of the story, but then we turn it around to all the 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds who had an inactive lifestyle and then started to embrace this lifestyle as an athlete, whatever it is to you, so that they could play with their grandkids, so they don't have people depending on them, so that they can be independent, they can get off the toilet, whatever that is for
Hmm.
you, and then shifting that into why you do this. So the vision of your future self every day. And just sorry to plug my app again, but like one of the things I made sure to do in that app is in week 1, you do that exercise and come up with a vision so that as you're missing activities
Hmm.
sometimes it says, hey, you didn't do this activity, remember that you want to XYZ, let's get into it again.
Absolutely.
So that's the big answer. I mean, there are little day-to-day tactical answers based on
Hmm.
who are you, listener, what is your holdup, what's your biggest point of friction, what are you not doing, because if you're not walking at all, if you're sitting around all day, that could be the thing.
Hmm. No, that is absolutely our philosophy and the way that we operate as well, is that that's the only place you can create change, in my opinion, is from the identity that you have. And not just the identity of who you want to be, but the identity of who you hold in this moment as well. Like if your identity is of the best grandma in the whole world, the best grandma in the whole world can get up and down and pick up kids and be able to take care of them in a time of need. And that's, if you have that identity, you'll do what it takes. You'll start lifting even if it's really scary, even if you have some hip pain that you might not know how to work through, knowing that movement is ultimately the cure for that. So maybe we'll transition there. What are your thoughts on pain and moving through any kind of pain you might have in a safe way,
I mean,
especially
so
given
yeah.
your shoulder situation? Like, mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, depends on, are we talking, you know, chronic pain or acute pain or whatever, but
I think more chronic. Maybe
yeah,
it
chronic.
was
So
acute
like
at one time, but
knee
more acute on
issues, back
chronic.
issues,
Yes.
shoulder issues and all that.
Hip, shoulder, knee. Hmm.
I think there's definitely a big misconception about resistance training and lifting weights being unsafe or causing pain. And usually
Hmm.
it's the opposite. And it's hard to
Hmm.
convince anybody of this until
That's
they
exactly
try
it.
it.
Yeah. Mhm.
And this
Mhm.
goes back to our conversation about you're not lifting 225 pounds on day 1. So if you can carry a light bag of groceries today, you're resistance training. It's just you're not challenging your muscles, right? So if you start there, are you getting injured every day doing that? Probably not, right?
Mhm.
There's also the proof that when people tend to move around more instead of sitting, let's say they get up twice an hour for 2 minutes. That's my big advice for a lot of people, is just get up every 30 minutes for 2 minutes
Mhm.
and walk around. They find that the blood sugar, the blood flow, the insulin sensitivity, the energy, it all starts to spiral into the rest of their day in terms of pain. Like it helps with recovery and helps reduce pain. But when it comes to lifting weights, I've never, this is going to sound anecdotal, but I've never met someone who made their pain worse. I've only seen pain improve when they start squatting correctly and deadlifting correctly, right? So that's the key word, is the right form and the right progression. Knee pain, deep squats are fantastic for knee pain. Shallow squats that are done correctly can make it worse, right? Because you're loading the knee and you're not having that full pivot around the knee. Deadlifting, if you're rounding your back and you're yanking the bar and that's not correct deadlift, well, you can add a ton of extension and rotation on your lumbar spine. That can make things worse. But man, have I seen so many men and women of all ages deadlift in a controlled way. And within, a week or two, they're like, oh my gosh, my back pain is gone or it's reduced. And now I can sit at my desk and get my work done. So
And I'm sure there are
start.
studies to back up that anecdote. I'm certain there are.
Look, I
I just
pepper
need to dive in
PTs,
better.
physical therapists with these questions all the time, and like good surgeons. And the world has changed. Like it used to be that they were super cautious, and now at least the ones I work with are more work with athletes. Are like, yeah, movement is what's the phrase? Movement is medicine, and using the tissue is important. And even with my shoulder, they're like, look, we want to get you to using it as soon as you can. Once we ensure the repair, is
right. Like you don't just go do that after surgery and repair, but like, yes. Yeah. And then you can. And anecdotally for myself, I've found that to be true. If I ever don't move, I get more and more I get the rickety crickets. Like I hit oil can, like I need to be moving to be able to keep moving. So I feel that very much so.
Are there some range of movement kind of stop signs or just kind of like markers to be aware of before you start? You mentioned, deep squats versus kind of shallow squats, and the body's ability, to get down low and that kind of stuff. Are there some general guidelines for like new clients if you're doing an audit on, hey, where are we starting from? What are some things that people should be able to do just from a range of movement around? I'm thinking like probably like hips and shoulders mostly. That would indicate we might need to do some lighter stuff before we and specifically focus on range of movement with lighter stuff before we go into heavier kind of shock to your system stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a body weight audit. Just do it in space. So for a squat, that would be literally just kind of holding your hands in a prayer kind of position and pushing your knees out and then squatting down. And I always like to say, it's like you're squatting back to a box. And for many people, that means they need an actual box, right? Because they don't have the strength or mobility to even support themselves. It might be even going to a chair. So it's really finding where that is. I think a lot of people will surprise themselves. I had plenty of people say like, no, I can't squat with a bar. And I said, well, can you sit to a box with your body? And the answer is yes. Okay, then we can load that movement pattern and build over time. I think that answers your question. I mean, it really starts from that for the squat. I mean, the squat's the most technical. I think all the other movements are actually a little bit easier. Deadlifting and pressing tend to be easier for most people. One other thing does come to mind though, and that is breathing and bracing. I think when it comes to like day one, a skill that anybody should learn is how to brace and create what's called intra-abdominal pressure. And there's a lot of misconceptions about this, about how to breathe. And if you watch YouTube videos of somebody squatting and you listen to them breathing, it's not always correct. Like you'll hear them breathing out as they go down, right? And I firmly believe you should, be holding your breath as you go into the concentric. When you push out, maybe you could let the breath out. The heavier the lift as a percentage of your maximum, the bigger, tighter breath you need. It's a function of that. If you're doing very high reps, you almost don't need much of a breath. So there's kind of a sliding scale, and that will protect your spine and that will protect your joints as well.
Again, probably getting more into the weeds. What's your opinion on weight belts?
I like belts. I like belts. I like them because they add to the feeling of that intra-abdominal pressure, and they help you create a little bit more of it because they're effectively creating another sheath on top of your abdomen. But I wouldn't use them like from day one with your warm up. I would wait to use maybe a month or two in and you figure out the form and you're progressing and now it's starting to get heavy. Maybe do it on your last set. But then once you get up into like the real heavy weights and you're doing 80-90% of your max, it can be a helpful tool. And it also, for those of us who want performance and a few extra reps and weight, it also helps you jack that up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. This isn't anything that we've talked about before, so I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm curious your thoughts, if any, on blood flow restriction exercises.
Mixed. I'm mixed. I know some people love them for rehab. And I know a few people encouraging me to do that. And I'm like, if you're lifting weights, like standard traditional weightlifting, you don't really
Mhm.
need the BFR, but there are cases like I'm thinking when I start working just my left shoulder where you can go super light and then
Mhm.
crank that pressure up and get a similar effect. So I did an episode about this a while back, and I even had a owner of one of the companies on. I'm not, so
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
I'm kind of ambivalent is what I say. I think the evidence doesn't show it to be like a magic pill. It's more of a
Mhm.
rehab tool
Mhm.
for
I
the
think
most
it's
part.
definitely a rehab
Yeah.
tool, and when I have used it, it's been
Yeah.
as a rehab tool. I will say, not pro or con, but the lightest weight with blood flow restriction, and you can be real sore.
Oh yes.
Like
Oh,
it gets
geez.
really worked
Yeah.
out. Like you're like,
And you
awesome.
can wear the leg ones while doing some form of cardio, like very light cardio, and that will really crank up that pump and
I
the
can't
metabolites.
imagine.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that could be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a cool new. I don't know how new it is because I'm not an expert in that space. So I might be saying new, and the person that's an expert there is like, this has been around for decades.
It's
I hear,
new-ish, yeah, in terms of like the
yeah,
trend, how it's trending. My only problem with
exactly.
it is the hassle of it for most people. Like the equipment.
Hmm.
First of all, the equipment tends to be
The
expensive if
equipment,
you want good equipment that like has the right occlusion pressure, because it can
hmm
be a little dangerous if you're just doing it yourself. And
right?
then like setting it up,
Good call
calibrating it,
out.
making sure they don't fall off. It's this whole thing that just adds a ton of friction for most people who aren't even just doing
Hmm.
basic resistance
Right. I
training
mean,
yet.
we went
So
from basic,
yeah,
to
yeah.
blood flow restrictions. So
Yeah.
we're just covering it all. I like it. So tell me, well, don't tell me, tell our audience, please, about more about muscle mass and how it relates to being able to utilize glucose better, lose weight, maintain bone mass. Like, let's go into that a little bit more, even if you just restate it, because I think it's worth it.
No, this is one of my favorite topics I can nerd out on. So hopefully the
Let's
listener
nerd
doesn't get
out.
bored.
Love it.
You guys, by the way, are awesome having a podcast that's focused on, prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, because it just affects so many people, especially prediabetes, and the
My
precursors
passion,
to it is just prevalent with the vast majority of society. So, all right,
fortunately.
resistance training, right? A single bout of resistance training is going to immediately improve your insulin sensitivity for like 1 to 3 days. That's
Yes.
how powerful it is. And your muscles just used up the glycogen when you trained. And now what do they do? What are they?
They
They're
got to
trying to
replete
absorb
it.
glucose
Yeah.
from your
Hmm.
bloodstream. And that's regardless of weight loss at all. Like my message here is like lifting weights and building muscle is so independently powerful, separate from weight loss, that everyone should be doing it, because it's just going to amplify the effects of all this stuff. And it's going to make fat loss and weight loss easier anyway.
Hmm.
So there are some mechanisms here that are pretty cool. I mentioned GLUT4 transporters, and I think the first time I learned about this was I had Benziel on my show. He's type 1 diabetic, and
Awesome.
he was
I
he
was
was like,
thinking you were going to say the diabetes podcast, but
well,
okay, fine.
before I met you guys,
Hi.
unfortunately. Yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years, so
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
and the GLUT4 transporters, guys probably talk about these, right? They're
Mhm.
like the glucose stores on your muscle cells, and contraction of muscle is what activates them. So I think even walking activates them. That's why both are super powerful. And it's kind of like a mechanism that occurs independent of insulin itself.
Hmm.
And so the more you train, the more you use your muscles, the more you're opening these and clear glucose from the blood. So we see that people who
Love
lift
it.
weights almost don't have to think about blood sugar. They don't even have to track. They don't have to use a CGM. It's like you're just automatically handling it, by lifting weights.
Yes, say it again. Like
Okay.
we talk GLUT4 pathway all the
Yeah.
time because this is really like if your pancreas doesn't make insulin, or if you're resistant to the insulin that your pancreas does make, because we've said before, and I'll say it again, people who have insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, they could be producing more insulin than all three of us combined,
Hmm.
even, but it's a broken mechanism. It's just the cells can't get that in. It's all gunked up.
Yeah.
So I think that that is so crucial. Like sitting, doing nothing. You take one person with more muscle mass sitting in a chair next to somebody with less muscle mass, and that person with more muscle mass is going to have better blood sugars. They're going to be using more calories, burning more fat at rest. And I think we can't say it enough. Like if you take
Yeah.
nothing else, that is the thing to take.
And the thing about food you just mentioned leads also to the carb discussion, because I get in lots of arguments with people over this. If you are lifting weights, you need and can use a lot more carbs, and
Mhm,
it's not a concern. And like all
mhm,
the arguments about low carb and everything for diabetics, it's confounding the variables. Like that's just one variable. If in line with a sedentary diet, yeah, not going to help you very much. But
mhm,
once you start building muscle, all of a sudden the floodgates open. You find like, okay, I need the glycogen, I need the glucose, like I need the recovery and performance. You don't have to. I'm just saying, like it significantly opens flexibility.
mhm,
Even type 1 diabetics that I know who lift weights, like they eat a modest amount of carbs, 2, 3, 400 grams of carbs. It's not like they have to be low carb. I think that's important.
I
Um,
agree.
and then like speaking of glucose, the muscle itself, the skeletal muscle is like a battery for glucose, right? That's the way I like to
Mhm.
say it. It
I like that.
it's it's like 80% of insulin uptake, or insulin stimulated uptake, I should say, of glucose goes to your muscles. So if you have
Mhm,
more muscles, think about what that does to the total equation.
mhm,
And then now you can handle more of that, right? And then the resistance training itself, I already mentioned, it depletes glycogen, which is again why most people do better fed before they train. Not everybody, but people ask my opinion on this all the time. I'm like, you
oh
can
yeah, it's a
train
hot
fasted or
topic
fed,
always.
but you got to experiment with yourself. Like that, I'm a big fan
Mhm,
of experimentation, of seeing what, eat the banana for 2 weeks and compare it to when you didn't eat anything, and just tell me, like,
mhm,
again, for a vast majority of people, you'll hear, oh, I had more energy. I could get more reps. I could last longer in the gym. And what is that? That leads to overall better results with your,
mhm.
the activity. So all of that, I mean, the postprandial, right, which is the after meal glucose handling, is also affected by resistance training. So now if you combine that with your post meal walking, you just like you're a
Yeah.
glucose burning
Yes.
machine.
That's what I say is like, let's just get all the tools in the tool chest
Let's
and
do it.
use them. Because why not? Because otherwise you're combating just these high glucoses over time. And back to what you said about carbohydrates, I think they get a bad reputation because people notice that carbohydrates are that fuel source for your body. So when you can't get that fuel source into the cell, it is what will have a greater effect on the blood sugar. So
Yep.
people who are monitoring such things because they're diagnosed with type 1 or type 2
Hmm.
diabetes, they will notice, oh, if I have rice, forget it. My blood sugars are so high. But the truth is, rice is just more concentrated carbohydrates in like a half cup of rice is 23 grams of carbs versus a half a cup of sweet potatoes, even, which would be 15 grams of carbs. So you've got more carbs in less volume. So if you, and when you have rice, it's usually like takeout, it's not a little bit. Well, for me, it's a little bit, but for most people, when you have rice, it's a lot. And it's because they're eating a whole lot of carbs and not necessarily having a lot of fiber with that, because most
Fiber,
people
protein, yeah.
in our country are eating the refined white rice and not whole grain brown rice. And you'll have a completely different blood sugar response to those two things. So, I mean, there's a lot, all that to say there's a lot of reasons why carbohydrates have a
Yes.
bad reputation, including high fructose corn syrup, a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that they're bad for you. So we're not going to get in an argument, Philip. I think
No,
you're
no, no, it's
spot
not,
on.
because all
No,
of it is
like I
true.
concur.
It's
It's
just in the
fantastic.
context and the nuance. I mean, you mentioned
Yes.
high fructose corn syrup. Who was I listening to? And one of the more nuanced guys I like, and he was talking about high fructose corn syrup, and he was talking about carbs that are hydrated versus dry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you take a
Mm-hmm.
potato. Potato is one of the most high satiety food. Actually, white potato is the number one most satiating foods on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you eat white potato that you've just, mashed or roasted or baked or whatever, it's still got a ton of water in it, right? And if you, however, dry it out by slicing it thin and then frying it,
Frying it in oil.
and
Yeah.
now you've made French fries, which are delicious, I understand.
Mhm.
You just don't, it's just not as satiating. I mean, it's the general concept of you're processing your food, you're taking water out of it, you're taking, it's why we like fiber. It's why we like, fruits and vegetables
Mhm.
and things like that, to balance out, along with a little bit of fat, our carbs and then our protein. So yeah, eating balanced meals and all that. It's funny you mention white rice because, again, it depends on the population. It depends on what you've done.
True.
If you've
Mhm.
spent, the last 5 years building muscle and having an active lifestyle, you may be like, I can't get enough carbs. What? Oh, like white rice. There you go. But for many, the blood sugar
Mhm.
spikes aren't sustained. Last thing I'll say is like A1C or
A1C.
yeah, and
Mhm.
chronic blood sugar. People conflate, and I'm sure your audience is much more savvy because you guys teach them this, but they conflate, short-term blood sugar spikes with long-term blood sugar
Ooh, yes.
control,
Very
where
good call.
if you're, let's say you're lifting weights, you almost want the blood sugar spike going into your training session, and then you're going to have blood sugar spike if you're having a big meal afterward. And it doesn't mean anything because you're going to dispose of that and it's going to
Mhm.
regulate out over time anyway. So like, don't fear it if it's doing its job. That's your body doing its job with insulin, pancreas, all that. Anyway, so it's
No,
fun
I
stuff.
I I love it. I know I could geek out on it all day. I think it's so cool. Um, I have my opinion about this, and you've kind of spoken to this a little bit, but continuous glucose monitors, I've seen them used as a selling tool to have awareness, and I've seen them used in a little less helpful ways sometimes. What are your thoughts on the interpretation piece and the results, if any, you know?
My thoughts are none of my clients use them. That's my thoughts. That's all
Mhm.
I'm gonna say. I again, type 1 diabetics absolutely need them, right?
Right, it depends on who
For
your
their
client
life,
is, right? Yeah,
Um,
uh-huh.
but I think I think it's helpful to see how they respond, how your blood sugar responds to what you're doing, as long as you then temper that response, without an over response of fear. Because I have heard of people literally cutting out all carbs because they have a blood sugar spike. And then
Right,
we'll
a
look at the numbers and
normal,
like, it went from this
natural
to this and
mhm,
that's it. you know, and look at
yeah,
the type 1 diabetics numbers and you see the difference. So,
right.
yeah, my thoughts are like, all data can be helpful if used the right way. And if you don't need it because you're lifting, living an active lifestyle, great. But if you are trying to reduce your blood sugars over time and find out patterns and see what affects you and see that, oh yeah, adding fiber or protein to this meal will level things out a bit. I don't have anything wrong. See anything wrong with that?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that if you're going to use it with someone who can help you interpret it or you know how to interpret it, they can be really amazing tools.
Yeah.
If you're blindly throwing one on and going through some place that doesn't really help you interpret it appropriately, I think it can be very damaging for your fear of food, for the way that you think about food, for so many things. As an example, I had a CGM. I won't say the brand because I don't want to say one or the other, but I had one that had expired, so I can't ethically use it with somebody who has type 1 or type 2 diabetes. So, guinea pig Richie steps up to the plate and I put that CGM on him, and a couple of times in the middle of the night it went off and it said his blood sugar was 55. His blood sugar was not 55,
Sleeping,
normal.
yeah.
Yeah, normal homeostasis for somebody not injecting insulin. You're not going to have a 55 blood sugar typically. So, I mean, I could have done a finger stick and tortured him with that and shown it was like 72 or 75, but I can say 98% certain it was not a 55 blood sugar. But like he was freaking out. Like, do I need to get this checked out? Do I need to go to the doctor? Am I hypoglycemic? So I think that was proof in the pudding for what I already knew. My confirmation bias, if you will, was that you really need somebody right there to interpret it for you so you don't freak out. And the
Yeah,
same with highs, same on the other end.
yeah. And there's the short-term versus long-term, right, as we mentioned before. I mean,
Absolutely.
are you know,
Mhm.
are you getting your blood markers checked? Because we said the HbA1c, but there's fasting
Mhm.
insulin, there's all the,
Yep.
I don't know if we're talking inflammation, but, like, inflammation's a big confusing subject, but there's actual inflammatory markers from your body's defense response
Mhm.
that can be measured, and if those things are trending in the right direction, you're doing the right things, and so you can see these things trend in the right direction despite having consistent spikes every day because that's the way you eat. That's your meal
Mhm.
pattern. So, it's
What is your experience, if any, with your clients getting their inflammatory markers tested?
yeah, I mean, it's not a prerequisite for me to have blood markers, but like for those that are in the older population who are interested in longevity, we'll definitely do the basics like CRP and interleukin 6 and TNF alpha, things like that, just to see, obviously if you have an autoimmune condition, you're going to have some of these things and
Mhm.
eosinophils, basophils, all that stuff are spiking.
Mhm.
And but at the end of the day, like that combined with lipids and blood pressure, resting heart rate, the stuff you can measure every day, all taken together is gives you the context.
Mhm.
So I do offer a really cool service. It's like this performance blood work, but it's more expensive and more complicated. It involves like looking at patterns across thousands of calculations of these markers to see, you know, do you need more of this nutrient over here? Do you need a lifestyle change over here? Would ashwagandha be helpful? Like these are more optimization things. But I think, yeah, having the basic blood panels, inflammation panels, and glucose type panels are good for most people.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. If somebody's like, there's no hope for me. I got this back pain from a car wreck back in '83. This knee is just forget it. What hope can you offer them?
They should listen to my podcast with Anthony Bryan that you mentioned before we started recording. He's paralyzed on one side of his body and he's won world medals.
Amazing podcast.
Uh,
Like so inspiring. I think it's
yeah,
fantastic.
I think
Encourage everyone
anybody
to check that
can
out.
and also I had, what's his name? Kevin McShann is one of my earliest interviews ever. He's in a wheelchair, was I think cerebral palsy, and he works out. And it's like, you see these people, I mean, I had surgery, I'm not gonna like over tout that, but the fact is I couldn't wait to get back to training because that's who I am, right? And I know how
Mhm.
helpful it is.
Identity.
So yeah,
Mhm.
so like you can train no matter what it is. You can train one limb, the opposite leg, the opposite arm, whatever. You can do something, let alone just walk or move. And I'd love to see these people's lifestyle as it is now, because the way to give them hope is like let's introduce one thing, let's do it for a few weeks and see how you feel. A lot
Mhm.
of people are just not taking action. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. That's so powerful. I think you just have to take people's excuses away
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
like if you're listening, if you need to go on YouTube and and watch people do amazing things and come back from incredible setbacks. Can you please, Philip, repeat the podcast, the paraplegic and then the gentleman who'd had a stroke in childhood and was the Olympian?
Yeah, Anthony Bryan was just on episode 415, so it's Anthony Bryan with a Y.
And
Awesome.
we'll put the links to
Yeah,
those in the show notes
episode
just to make it real
415.
easy.
Mhm.
So
I
Kevin,
think
that
it's
was a
just worth
long time
repeating.
ago. Let me
It's really
see. That
amazing.
was okay, episode 48. Wow. I don't even want to listen to that one because
Wow.
I cringe at my early episodes.
I think we're right around, we're not even at 48. So, Philip, have mercy.
He's like a motivational speaker, so you could probably just find him on his own YouTube stuff talking like practically every day about his experience.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So tell me, how do walking after meals, managing stress levels, getting enough sleep, lifting heavy from time to time, like lifting weights, how do these all fit together? Especially if somebody's maybe not doing ideal in the sleep department or the stress department or lifting. Um, like what if they can't do them all as is recommended?
So I know one of the things we were gonna potentially talk about is people who either are go get 'em types versus people who are on the fence and not wanting to do anything. And I think both of those face this issue because of one or the other thing. One is they're trying to do all these things from day one. Like everything you just said, people listen to the podcast and probably listen to your show and they're like, okay, I need to do sleep, I need to do stress management, I need to walk, I need
Yes.
to fix my
All the
nutrition, and I
things.
need to lift weights. Like
I
those
just
are
got a part-time job.
really, right. And I don't
Yeah.
know anything about nutrition science. And I hear influencers say seed oils are bad and carbs are bad and protein's bad now and fats are bad. So what do I do? Right. And so it's
Yes.
like, don't even, they're trying to do all the things and are overwhelmed by information. And so for that type of person, it really is a matter of what's the one immediate constraint? What is the biggest lever that you're not doing, or that you have a strength that makes it easy to do? I know those are slightly different things. For some people, it might take a bit of friction to overcome to start lifting weights,
Mhm.
but it's the thing they really need the most. So maybe it is worth getting into it. So it's picking the one thing that's at the top of the list. For a lot of you, that's sleep. I'll be honest. It's a lack of sleep.
Mhm.
I'll tell you what, I've been getting a lot of sleep the last few weeks compared to normal because of my surgery. And like I'm dropping weight. I'm not even trying to
You're
drop
like,
weight, right? I'm trying
a
to
whole
maintain weight.
new.
I'm eating more and dropping weight and like feeling better. And it reminds me how powerful sleep is for appetite, blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, cravings, fat,
Right?
belly fat, like all the things, right? So it's finding the one thing. For perfectionists who are like, I need to wait till everything is perfect. I need to wait till I have my gym set up, or I'm whatever, I need to wait till Monday, or I'm going to wait till after the holidays. Again, I think the solution's the same, right? It's like pick one thing and just take action on it and not wait for things to be perfect. I know it's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done.
But it needs to be said. Like, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you hearing this? Because this is really where it's at. I can't tell you how many people are like, I'm going to do it and clean out their entire pantry before starting, and then they're like, all right, I'm ready, and then they follow all this information that's out there, like you said, but which one, what makes sense, and then they just roll up their hands, like, no matter what I do, it doesn't work, and they quit. So what you're saying about finding that one thing and just like the Nike slogan, just do it, it's so understated. Like, you just
Yeah.
have to
And,
find
and
that
I think looping,
identity, and that's that vision and purpose.
and I think looping back to what he said earlier, chair squats are a completely fine entry into lifting weights. We pitch walking because you should be able to go out your front door and, go to the mailbox and back, whatever that is. If you've got a chair or a couch, you're probably sitting on a couch right now. Just get up and down a couple of times. That's a start. That's something, how many times can I do that is completely acceptable to start.
And not
And-
everybody
yeah.
can walk. We have people with Charcot foot. We have people, your interviewee, Philip, who was paraplegic, but you can move. I think that's the take home message.
That's true, because I remember a YouTube comment last week that's like, well, there's a problem with what you said because not everyone can get the amount of steps you're talking about. I think I was talking about the normal like 7,000 to 9,000 being, and I think I responded a little snarkily because YouTube, you have to do that. And I'm like, and they're like, so what do you do there? I said, just walk a little more than you are now. Like I was being a little sarcastic, but it's like, we do find excuses, and it's often like lateral thinking, like, okay, not what I can't do, but what I can, not what I can't, but what I
Yes.
can. I just had a call with a 15-year-old client. Again, I have a couple handful of one-on-one clients, and this is him and his mom are clients. Pretty cool. And so with teenagers, you have to be really careful, right? It's not about weight loss. It's about like really being positive and finding things that they enjoy that then help with this lifestyle. And, there's certain things he wasn't doing because he was stressed and didn't have the time. And, no criticism from me. It's more of, okay, what did you do that really helped you a lot? And he's like, well, I started just going outside and going for a walk after our dinners, like you suggested. And he's like, when I get out there, once I get out there, I realize I really like this, and I just keep going. And he's like, and now the weight's starting to drop anyway. I'm like, well, we're not focused on weight, but that's cool, And I don't know. It's just it's these little things. It's like you have to take the action, and then track what you're doing, right? You can't just do
Yeah.
random stuff and hope that it's going to solve everything. You have to do it, track it, see what comes back, and let that motivate you. Meanwhile, removing friction along the way. Like that's my philosophy is you're not going to find motivation on the worst days. You have to make it almost effortless, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think you talked to this in something I'd seen that you posted was having different levels of your plan. Like you've got everything's ideal, and then you've got if it's not ideal, but I can still get it done. And then there's everything blows up in my face. What do I still do and call it a win? And I thought that was really brilliant. I like that.
Well, I love that you're like looking up all the content. It's really good prep for that's really good research for a podcast. Trust me.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. The minimum viable dose is a concept you probably a lot of your listeners, listeners hear about, and it's a
But
good
not
starting
enough.
place. Yeah. What's that?
I said that they don't hear it enough. I
They don't hear
think
it
you
enough.
can.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think
That's
we
true.
often think, well, I've said it once or twice, people know it, but the truth is 12 times or more, people have to hear it. People have to hear it. So let's say it again, Philip. I'll be quiet. You talk.
It goes back to what can you do versus right what I can't do. And so as I've worked with clients and in our group program, we'll see that people have the little excuse gremlins that come up because life is chaotic.
Oh,
and
excuse gremlins.
Yeah. And life is always gonna be chaotic, guys. You know that. There's no such thing as like easy, normal life. Like it just every week something's gonna happen. So your optimal is okay for that 1 week that is quiet, you're gonna get all this stuff done. Your minimum is then what is your backup plan when something interrupts you? And that usually means you can shift or tweak and still get it done. So that might be like instead of working out Monday, you work out Tuesday because you have a 3-day program, you're able to shift and you've planned ahead for that. You've said, I'm only going to work out 3 days a week so that I give that flexibility. But then the bailout strategy, which is this time of year, as we're recording this, it's the holidays. It was part of a challenge where we said, look, come up with something that's just out of your pocket. You can do anywhere, no matter what the situation is for like 5 minutes related to your food or related to your training. And that could literally be a body weight, running up and down the stairs. That could be you carry a protein bar around with you, like really, really rock bottom stuff that still gives you a win rather than a zero. And that's the concept.
I love this. And Philip, this is going to actually air right in the new year.
Perfect.
Where a lot of people are going to do that all or nothing strategy.
Yes, they are.
And because a couple of balls got dropped, they're just going to throw all the balls in the trash. So I think this is so important to speak to and know that it's not if something's going to fail or not go right, it's when. And just making sure you've got your different levels and stages for what you're going to do in that case. I think that's awesome.
And as you're saying this, what made me think about the new year is, I don't know when this comes out, but like, I think it's on either December 29 or January 2nd. I have an episode coming out called The Case for Building Muscle First in 2026, Why Cutting Alone Won't Work. And my thought there was everybody's thinking of fat loss and losing weight. I want to encourage people to build muscle because you're going to be far ahead of all those people when it comes time to do a little cut. A few months down the line or in the middle of your building phase, you're going to be so far better off because you're going to be energized, you're going to be fueled, your blood sugar is going to be under control, and you're not going to be thinking of restricting and dieting. You're going to be thinking of fuel. And then, hey, I'm going to drop some fat now in a sustainable way very quickly, and then I'm going to get back to it. So yeah, I think it's a good message for 2026.
That's right in line with our message because we really talk about like what can you add nutrition wise, like what fruits and vegetables can you add? And it's the same thing relative to what you're saying is like, not how can don't focus on like losing fat, but focus on building muscle because the losing fat part is going to come secondarily to the building of muscle and strength and bone mass, that metabolically active tissue. Oh, I love it. Love it. So, Philip, is there anything else you would like to share as we wrap this podcast up? We've got your beautiful app that works on people's identity and passion and mission focused. What else can you tell us about what you have planned and what your vision is for people?
Man, my vision is everybody just gets super strong and healthy and like lives a thriving life because your body is adaptable at any age. But this whole how we're ending on this note about positivity and additive lifestyle. I mean, you can't out diet or out restrict this sedentary lifestyle. And do you even want to live that way? Like, who wants to live that way? Right. Wouldn't you rather be
torturous,
feeling energized and playing with your kids and just being young, 20 years younger than your peers, because you will be at least by the time you're in your 70s and 80s. So that's really the thought I would have, that if you feel like you're having to cut things and restrict and say no, it is probably not the sustainable approach, and there's a much more positive, additive way to approach this.
Man, I love that. I love that so much. Oh,
awesome.
Fantastic. Any questions from you, Richie, before we go? Are you
I was
good?
just so we know where to go to listen to Wits and Weights podcast. Where can they go to get your app?
Just go to witsandweights.com/app.
Okay.
And maybe we can include a special link, give your listeners 20% off. Because
when
this comes out,
that'd be great. Yeah.
When this comes out, our holiday promotion is done.
Okay.
But your listeners will get a special link to get that discount.
Okay, we'll definitely have that in the show notes. So I might jump in on that myself.
All right, awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Philip. We enjoyed having you. I love your take on this, and like the alignment is in line with what we know really works for people. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
you guys are doing, this is a wonderful mission, honestly. And it's a great name because people know how to find you guys, Diabetes Podcast.
Awesome.
It was just waiting for us. It really was.
Yeah,
it was. Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
A big thank you to our guest, Philip Pape, for joining us on the Diabetes Podcast. Today we learned that muscle is your metabolic battery. Lifting improves sensitivity for up to 72 hours, independent of weight loss. Walking after meals, lifting a few times a week, and protecting your sleep. Stacking these behaviors gives you an outsized benefit. Start where you are. Chair squats count, and progress beats perfection. Use data wisely. Constant glucose monitors can help with context, but interpretation matters. And plan for real life. Have an optimal plan, a minimum plan, and a bailout plan so you never hit zero. To connect with Philip, you can listen to him on the Wits and Weights podcast, as well as check out his coaching app at witsandweights.com/app. And we'll have links to that podcast, as well as a special 20% off link for our listeners in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to give it a like and leave a review. This really helps to promote and sustain this free podcast and get the word out to the millions of people worldwide that are struggling with type 2 and prediabetes, letting them know that remission is possible if you take action today. And if you have additional questions or need additional support, reach out to us at support@empowerdiabetes.com. Until next time, take courage. You can do this, and we can help.